a veteran of multiple space flights, including STS-128. He is now the chief test astronaut for Collins Aerospace, part of the team helping to develop the next generation spacesuits, which will be used on the International Space Station and possibly beyond on commercial space stations as well. It's a fascinating conversation about the progress on the testing so far, specifically on their trip on a parabolic flight over a couple of days, where they were able to test out and go through a number of qualification points on their spacesuit with both Danny inside and outside of the suit, as well as partnering with another former astronaut that's on the Collins team. There are several photos and clips from that parabolic flight weaved into the conversation. So again, you can find that right now on the YouTube channel. We are also powered here by our wonderful channel members. So thanks to folks like Joshua Ganin, Jamie Setchell, aka JJ, Mary Painter, BG Floyd, Jeff Groves, and many, many others who are joining us tonight. That Opal guy, I know Callistia Lee's in here. I've seen her name earlier. Thank you to all of our channel members for helping support what we do. Channel membership comes with a number of perks here, including discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos, and the ability to watch all of our Cape-based launches in 4K. And hello to Butterfly checking in here. Before we go further down the membership front, do want to thank our wonderful moderators also in the live chat for helping keep things running smoothly, allowing for robust and civil conversation in the live chat. So thanks to Astro Joe, I see you checking in tonight, Stephanie B as well. Thanks to the both of you, and I'll keep an eye for any of the other mods. I think Rusty Shackelford is over on Launchpad Live. So thanks to all the mods here and Astro Jen. We've actually had a number of channel members that have joined as we've been getting ready to start this live stream. So just a quick rundown before we get into the meat and potatoes of things. Welcome to Linda, RPM Motorsports, Jeanette Kraus, Mike G, Ion Hurasis. Actually, I think some of these are from our last live stream, so forgive me if I'm repeating some, but what the heck. We appreciate you being channel members. So thanks to Bill Womble, Richard Barton, Jack Yates, Dave Moreno, Linda Panko, Bad Doge for all joining with channel membership. And thanks specifically to Callistia Lee, Tim Boucher, or Tim Boucher, and Astro Joe for gifting Spaceflight Now memberships. One each from Tim and Astro Joe, and 10 from Callistia Lee. Thanks to all of you for your generosity kicking off this live stream. And to our newest channel members, if you were gifted a channel membership, be sure to thank Callistia, Tim, or Astro Joe in the live chat. And our thanks to Josh King for being a member for 17 months. Last but not least, you can also join in the conversation by using the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will you help support the channel, but if your comment or question is appropriate to be read on the show, we'd love to bring you into the chat. So our thanks, kicking things off with Hav Mitchell, $2 Super Chat. Thank you so much, Hav. Losos with a $10 Super Chat. Thank you so much, Losos. And Web Monk for $2 Super Chat as well. Thanks to all of you for supporting our coverage tonight. We're at T-minus 24 minutes, 31 seconds and counting. As previously mentioned, SpaceX has begun the fueling process on this Falcon 9 flight, heading off from Space Launch Complex 4 East, or Slick 4E over at Vandenberg Space Force Base. This will be the 11th flight of an orbital class rocket variety from Vandenberg this year. At this point in the count, about 6 minutes ago, SpaceX started loading cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels of the first stage, which is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. And just a couple of minutes ago, they started loading that cryogenic helium on board the second stage of the Falcon 9 as well. Let's go ahead and walk you through the rest of the countdown as we have a number of fueling milestones left to go. Let's talk about what we're anticipating as we roll on through the countdown. Of course, more than 10 minutes ago is when the SpaceX launch director verified the go for the start of propellant load. We do know that go ahead was given, which meant that at T minus 35 minutes, prop load began with loading rocket grade kerosene or RP1 on both the first and the second stage, and liquid oxygen on board the first stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. Here are those two that I just recently mentioned, the helium on the first and second stages. And just about 15 seconds ago, loading of the second stage kerosene should have wrapped up or thereabouts. About T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down process begins. It's about that time when the so-called big vent also occurs. If you recall, Falcon flights from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station or NASA's Kennedy Space Center. It's a striking event that happens as the feed lines are being chilled prior to the next event, which of course comes at T minus 16 minutes when second stage liquid oxygen loading begins. That's followed up in T minus 7 minutes when the chill down of the 9 Merlin 1D engines gets underway. It involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps and helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes is when the strong back retract sequence begins. It starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up. And then because this is a Vandenberg launch, the transporter erector or the strong back will recline about 13 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. At T minus 3 minutes, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. That's followed about a minute or so later by the second stage LOX tank load completing. At that point, the Falcon 9 will be fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. 45 seconds out, the launch director will verify go for launch. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 engines ignite and are healthy, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for liftoff. Tonight, again, targeting 7:30 p.m. Pacific, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 02:30 UTC. In other words, T minus 20 minutes and 23 seconds. We know that SpaceX is nearing the start of launching to the 8th shell of its Starlink constellation, but for now, from the West Coast, they're still launching to the 7th shell. Let's go ahead and talk about the flight path of this Falcon 9 rocket, launching the Starlink 7-18 mission. As has been the case, Falcon 9 rocket will lift off from Space Launch Complex 4 East, or Slick 4E, here at Vandenberg Space Force Base. It'll fly in a southeasterly trajectory along the coast of Southern California and the western coast of Mexico. So, assuming conditions are clear for you and your family, or if you've got some friends in any part of that area, especially in Southern California, around about 7:30, you might want to tell them to pop outside since this will be coming up close to sunset there on the West Coast. It'll likely be a very spectacular launch. Again, assuming the weather cooperates for visibility. SpaceX's first stage will follow the path of the orange line you see here on your screen, where it will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. The only one they have currently on the West Coast is the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. Other 2 here stationed in Florida. SpaceX will also recover the fairing halves using one of their recovery vessels here in California, stationed just a little bit further downrange of the map that you see here on your screen. T minus 17 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. This is the Starlink 7-18 mission. 22 Starlink satellites on board this Falcon flight. Each of them clocks in at about 1,760 pounds or 800 kilograms. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon hull thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers. They're built in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle. They'll be deployed at about 180 miles or 290 kilometers in altitude at a 53 degree inclination. The photo you're seeing on the left-hand side of your screen is a stack of them in their launch configuration prior to an earlier Falcon flight. And while we don't have a good photo of them on orbit from SpaceX, either in photorealism or rendering, this is an image from HEO Robotics that was captured last year from one of its satellites, showing what a Starlink V2 Mini looks like on orbit. Of course, they're called the V2 Minis because they're the smaller version of the version 2 Starlink satellites, which are intended to launch on board SpaceX's much larger Starship rocket. As we saw with the 3rd integrated flight test, SpaceX has begun testing the payload door, what it calls the PEZ dispenser. Sounds like there will not be Starlink payloads on board the 4th integrated test flight of Starship. But of course, eventually they'll start testing that capability. TBD, though, if they're going to call those, once they start launching version 2 Starlinks, or if they'll call them version 3, since so many of the V2 minis have launched at this point. We're now T minus 15 minutes, 11 seconds and counting. We're about a minute into the process of liquid oxygen load on the Falcon 9 second stage there at Vandenberg. In a little less than 10 minutes, we should be getting video from SpaceX, and we'll be able to show you views of the Falcon 9 rocket itself and bring you mission audio as well at that point in time. That'll be just before the strong back retract sequence begins. As we close in toward that milestone, I want to thank the more than 17,000 of you that are joining us now live. Really appreciate you spending part of your Monday afternoon with, or Monday evening with us, I should say. Hope you all had a wonderful and restful weekend, however you decided to spend it. Hopefully with family and or friends. Maybe just catching up on some much needed sleep. Want to thank some folks who are supporting us this evening on our live stream. Our thanks to Cynthia Graves with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Simply saying, nice. Welcome to Mark Whitmore joining us with channel membership at the PAL leader level. Thank you so much, Mark. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. One of our newest channel members, Paragon Universal, with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Paragon, who says, thank you for your amazing coverage. Thank you so much for supporting us. Really appreciate it. As stated at the top, we can't do these streams without the support of our wonderful community. So thanks to all of you. Thanks to Marcus Gallegos, one of our wonderful channel members, for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. So thanks to Marcus for that generosity, and to our 5 newest channel members, welcome aboard. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Marcus in the live chat here. And lastly, for now, thanks to channel member Space Nerd for $1 super chat as well. Thank you, Space Nerd. Good to see you this evening. We're now T-minus 13 minutes and counting. Before we come upon the engine chill down sequence on the Falcon 9's Merlin 1D engines, let's go ahead and talk about the launch timeline. Once the Falcon 9 rocket leaves the pad, this is what we're expecting on a nominal flight of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 7-18 mission. Again, that T0 liftoff targeting 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 02:30 UTC. That'll be followed at T plus 1 minute 12 seconds when the Falcon 9 rocket passes through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. That'll be followed by a few events in fairly rapid succession. T plus 2 minutes 25 seconds. See first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO. That'll be followed a few seconds later by stage separation. And then the Merlin vacuum engine on the Falcon 9 second stage will ignite for second stage engine ignition, or SES-1. The payload fairings will be jettisoned at T plus 3 minutes and 5 seconds, floating down to the waters of the Pacific Ocean underneath parachutes, where again they will be recovered by SpaceX, assessed for their viability for future launches, and then refurbished to support those. SpaceX saves about $6 million per recovery, so it's an important part of their business model to, as much as possible, recover and refurbish those payload fairings, along with the booster, of course. T plus 6 minutes and 8 seconds will be the first stage entry burn, lasting 26 seconds in total. It'll be followed up by the first stage landing burn, making its way down toward the drone ship. Of course, I Still Love You. T plus 7 minutes and 56 seconds. Touchdown should be right about 8 minutes and 19 seconds into the flight. In T plus 8 minutes and 37 seconds, the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will cease firing. Following the parking orbit insertion and remaining in that coast phase, it'll reignite that Merlin vacuum engine, that is, at T plus 53 minutes and 24 seconds for a quick 2-second burn, setting up for Starlink satellite deployment at T plus 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 18 seconds. Now, if you've been with us for a previous Starlink mission, you know that it has been quite some time since SpaceX carried through one of these flights to its finale. So we won't actually see the deployment of the Starlink satellites themselves, but here's an image, or a video, I should say, of what deployment looks like from an October launch from last year. You can see the stack of Starlink V2 minis drifting away from the Falcon 9 upper stage, which you see there in the reflection. As the stack drifts away, you'll see another angle on the Starlink V2 minis in just a moment here. From the perspective of the Merlin vacuum engine, there it is. Over time, the Starlink V2 minis will drift apart and go into their respective orbital positions. Part of SpaceX's work towards not adding orbital debris is that the Starlink satellites are designed to burn up completely upon re-entry. So once they have reached the end of their life usefulness, they'll be brought back and deorbited in a controlled manner where they will burn up. We're now T minus 8 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. A little less than 2 minutes away from the chill down of that 9 Merlin 1D engines. We're now T minus 7 minutes, 57 seconds and counting. Less than a minute away from that engine chill down sequence beginning. Taking a look at the live chat here. First off, I want to thank the nearly 30,000 of you that we have watching with us this evening. Really appreciate you spending part of your Monday with us. Hope if you went back to work today, you had a wonderful and productive day. And if you are planning to go track the eclipse in a week, I hope your eclipse tracking planning is going well, and hopefully you already booked a hotel somewhere in the country where there's not going to be a cornucopia of clouds, which it seems like is going to be, unfortunately, most of the case along the path of totalities. So looks like the Northeast is going to be your best bet on that front if the forecasts continue to materialize as they appear to be. Taking a look at the live chat, want to thank Spitfire for a $5 super chat. Thank you, Spitfire. Under the Tornado, which hopefully is not based on real life events, but thank you so much for the $5 super chat. And Tornado says, enjoying these launches. We very much appreciate your support of our coverage of them. I want to welcome Leslie Garrett to channel membership at the pad leader level. Thank you so much, Leslie. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. Metal Seer with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Metal, and says this is for the camera fund so we can see the rocket. And yeah, we are mulling how we can improve. Well, we're constantly looking at ways that we can improve our live stream broadcasts. And obviously, having greater access in the Vandenberg area would be exceedingly helpful for that. So we are always looking for creative ways to do that, and your support will help that process. So thank you, Metal. Our thanks as well to Mindy Rogers for a very generous $50 super chat. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you supporting us at that level. And to Michelle Penland for a $2 super chat saying, love SpaceX, and checking in from Lumpo, California. Now, just a little over 5.5 minutes away from the planned liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. We should be getting views from SpaceX momentarily. Before we do, let's just briefly run through the back end of the fueling process to let you know the last few elements that we're waiting on. The engine chill down sequence, of course, has gotten underway by now. The first stage kerosene tank load should be complete. We are coming up on the strong back retract sequence beginning in just about 40 seconds. That'll be followed by first stage liquid oxygen load wrapping up. Second stage LOX load should be complete at T minus 2 minutes. The Falcon 9 will be fully fueled. 1 minute out will be the final pre-launch checks. Of course, the SpaceX launch director will give their go 45 seconds out.
For retract.
Engine ignition command at T minus 3 seconds and a liftoff coming up at 7:30. And without further ado, promised views from SpaceX as we are closing in on what looks like a fairly lovely sunset. Do see some clouds hanging around the area though, so hopefully where you are, if you are one of our friends watching from Southern California, you've got decently clear views of this Falcon 9 flight tonight. Weather, of course, has been the long pole in the tent for SpaceX with this launch in the last 2 attempts. But so far, it looks like these clouds are not going to be an impediment for liftoff in now less than 4 minutes.
Drawback is retracting.
There you hear that call out, and you see the transporter erector, or the strong back, beginning to recline away from the Falcon 9 rocket here at Space Launch Complex 4 East. T-minus 2 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. I want to squeeze in just a couple more comments before we get into the last minute of the count. Welcome to new channel member, Mike Mahoney. Joining us at a later level. Really appreciate that, Mike. Butterfly asking if SpaceX has ever launched 3 times in one day. We believe there's been at least 1, if not 2 times within 24 hours that they've launched 3 missions, from our recollection. Eric Scaramuza with a $2 super chat saying, watching from Nashville. Thank you for your great stream. Thank you, Erica, for supporting us. Mike Mahoney with a $5 super chat, joining in from Kensington, New Hampshire, to infinity and beyond. So we're now closing on the final 2 minutes of the count. Since we are within the last 2 minutes, we're going to go ahead and keep our eyes on the Falcon 9 rocket, just in case there's any last minute something or other that crops up, and we want to make sure we're paying attention and have our ears open here.
Stage 2 lock load complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 is now fully fueled with 1 million pounds of propellant and is less than a minute and a half away from the launch of the Starlink 7-18 mission.
Gas close out.
And again, the venting you're seeing here are the ground gas closeouts that you just heard that call out for.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
And in just a few more seconds, we should hear the SpaceX launch director give their go for launch. And again, at the top right-hand corner of your screen, that is
LD is go for launch.
Launch time in real time. So you're about 30 seconds away if you're in Southern California. So keep your eyes peeled to the skies.
T-minus 30 seconds.
And we are under 30 seconds now from the SpaceX count, just over 10 seconds in real time. So we're going to go ahead and listen in as SpaceX counts off the launch of the Starlink
T-minus 15 seconds.
mission.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Go Starlink, go SpaceX.
MOD tier pressure nominal.
Vehicle is pitching downrange. Power and telemetry nominal.
And with that, we had a good liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket, now a minute into flight.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
That call, the vehicle is now traveling faster than the speed of sound. After 3 scrubs,
Max
no,
Q.
no fooling, we are past max Q, that point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Coming upon a few events in, again, rapid succession, we'll have first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at T plus 2 minutes and 25 seconds. That'll be followed a few seconds later by stage separation. The Merlin vacuum engine will ignite, and then a little after 3 minutes into flight, payload fairings will deploy.
And vac chilling in for ignition.
The call for MVAC chill, they are thermally conditioning that Merlin vacuum engine, preparing it for ignition. And a nice view of the curve of the Earth just off the left-hand side of the screen. As it looked like a beautiful launch at sunset. Hopefully some folks in Southern California got treated to a nice view tonight.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
And vac ignition.
And all good callouts from the SpaceX team, and some good visuals here from the Falcon 9's onboard cameras. You can see there on the left-hand side of your screen those hypersonic grid fins deploying on the Falcon 9 first stage. They'll help provide steering and stability as that booster makes its way back down towards the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. If successful, this will be the 87th landing on that drone ship.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And those Starlink satellites exposed to the vacuum of space now for the first time on this mission. Now coming up on 3.5 minutes into flight. The next milestone we'll see coming up will be that first stage
Both
entry
vehicles
burn.
are following nominal trajectories.
And a good call out from SpaceX that both the booster and the upper stage following their intended paths. Those bursts you're seeing from the Falcon 9 first stage are the cold gas thrusters, helping to provide some attitude control for the vehicle. A little over 4 minutes into flight, less than 2 minutes away from the start of that 20-something second entry burn. This booster that has supported this mission, tail number 1071 in the SpaceX fleet, made its 15th liftoff. We'll see if it's able to make its 15th landing today. And to go back to a question that we got from Butterfly while we're waiting on the start of that entry burn, just a little over a minute from now, there were a couple of times, as fortunately Stephen was able to run the numbers and look up some of the history for us in the background. Appreciate that, Stephen. There were a couple of times when SpaceX was able to launch 3 times within 24 hours. Back in February, they launched the USSF 124 mission, followed by the launch of Intuitive Machines IM-1, and then Starlink 7-14. All those missions happened
Both
in the
vehicles
span.
continue to follow nominal trajectories.
Get some great views of the shadow of the first stage on the booster there, getting the setting sun. As I was saying, those missions happened over the span of 23 hours and 4 minutes. Then just about 3.5 weeks ago, saw the launch of Crew 8, followed by Transporter 10 and Starlink 6-41. Those 3 launches happening within
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
20 hours and 3 minutes, right as we were seeing the entry burn begin on this particular mission. This burn lasted just a little over 20 seconds. But you can see the Falcon 9 first stage speedometer
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
has plummeted rapidly as the booster was essentially slamming on the brakes,
Stage
making
1
its way
FPS has saved.
down towards the drone ship. Of course, is still level. Still seeing a nominal burn on the Falcon 9 second stage that Merlin Mackey mentioned there. Nice view of sunset in the upper part of the screen. With a fair amount of daylight there in the Pacific Ocean, we should see some nice views of the booster making its way down towards the drone ship.
Stage 2 FTS has saved.
Stage 1 transonic.
And the call to flight termination system has been saved. It's no longer needed on the upper stage. Coming up on the landing burn here. Less than 20 seconds.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Some good callouts. We should see views from the drone ship coming up on the right-hand side of your screen momentarily.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And with that, we have a confirmed good landing of the Falcon 9 first stage booster, B-1071.
And vac shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And a good call out from SpaceX for that nominal orbital insertion. The Falcon 9 upper stage will remain in that parking orbit until T plus 53 minutes and 19 seconds. And there will be just a brief 1-second burn, setting up for the Starlink satellite deployment at T plus 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 13 seconds. And again, because SpaceX does not carry through the full flight path and broadcast forum for their missions, we'll wait for confirmation of Starlink satellite deployments. That'll just about do it for us tonight. Before we go ahead and turn you loose, though, do want to thank some folks that made this live coverage possible, especially in the last few minutes. Promise we will always come back to y'all before we close out with our mission stats. So our thanks to Mama Pinks for a $5 super chat, noting this was her first live launch. So excited. We were almost able to see it in person Saturday, but had to come home to Sonoma County. Mark Otto gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you so much, Mark, for your generosity. Peralta Rockets, the $5 super chat, watching with over the hills in Oakland with binoculars. Lucinda Miles with the $2 super chat. Thank you, Lucinda. Michael McRory with a $2 super chat, one of our wonderful channel members, saying very kindly, "You're the best, Will." That's very sweet. Thank you, Michael. Wei Long Pu with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Wei Long. Square Gravy with channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard Square Gravy. Glad to have you with us. Puria Adani with a $1 super chat. Thank you so much, Puria. Joseph Val with a $5 super chat saying, from Fishers, Indiana, space is our future and love is the fuel. Love that. Let You Water with a $2 super chat, watching from the great Hoosier state of Indiana. Hello to all the Hoosiers in the house tonight. Chris Williams with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Chris. Skywalker37 with a $5 super chat saying, shouting out to Lionel and Ryan watching from Vancouver in Canada. Hello to all of our Canadian friends. Channel member Steve Brock. Thank you, Steve, for the $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Steve. And to another one of our supporters with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much for your support this evening. And Callistia Lee with a $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Callistia. Saying thank you, Will. Mods and all of Spaceflight Now, as always. Fantastic coverage. Channel member Christopher Jones with a $2 super chat as well. As promised, we close out all of our broadcasts with a look at where we have landed now that we have a successful liftoff and landing of the SpaceX booster. So here's where we are at present. This was the 15th flight of Falcon 9 booster 1071, the 317th Falcon 9 launch to date. This was SpaceX's 32nd Falcon 9 flight of 2024 and subsequently also their 32nd orbital launch of the year. This was SpaceX's 106th orbital launch in the last 365 days, the 71st SpaceX launch from Space Launch Complex 4 East, the 139th overall orbital launch from this pad as well, and the 11th orbital launch from Vandenberg in 2024. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 87th landing on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. This was the 226th SpaceX drone ship landing to date, and its 291st Falcon booster landing. We're getting very close to number 300. And finally, some industry stats. This was the 11th orbital launch from California, the 34th orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 37th orbital launch from a U.S. rocket company, including the 3 so far from Rocket Lab down in New Zealand. And, of course, they just announced today another launch heading up from New Zealand with a Korean payload as well as one from NASA. You can check that out on our launch schedule right now. That's going up at the end of this month. And this was also the 63rd orbital launch globally. Taking a look at the pie chart of where the world's countries that have launched orbital rockets stand. US with 36, China with 14, Russia with 5, Japan with 3, India and Iran with 2, and the asterisk noting partial or complete launch failures, in one in China, one in Japan so far this year. Coming up for the launch schedule, we do have a couple here locally in Florida at the end of the week. We're looking at a Friday morning launch, a painfully early Friday morning launch, if just my own editorial opinion there, the painfully early part. It's Starlink 6-47, clocking in at about 2:14 a.m. Eastern, 06:14 UTC. And then on Sunday, we're looking at a rideshare mission, a new variety of rideshare mission heading to a mid-inclination orbit from SpaceX called Bandwagon 1. That'll be lifting off from Launch Complex 39A here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center at a very reasonable 7:02 p.m. Eastern, 23:02 UTC. And also for those eagerly waiting for the final launch of United Launch Alliance's Vulcan, or excuse me, not, well, Vulcan's coming up, but not for a while. But the Delta IV Heavy, of course, is still waiting in the wings. It is now looking like next week, possibly April 9th. So it is not going to eclipse those wanting to watch the eclipse. But if you're hoping to see both in person, both totality and the launch of the Delta IV Heavy, it may be a bit of a tight turnaround if the date holds at present. I want to thank a few more folks before we go ahead and close things out for the night. GPAL with a 420 super chat saying greetings from NorCal. And hello to all of our friends in Northern California from Sacramento Kid himself. Stone with a £1 super chat. Thank you so much, Stone, saying been watching from London. How wicked. Love it. Theory B. Rivas Jr. with a $2 super chat saying thank you for the opportunity. Well, thank you so much for supporting our coverage, Leary. Teresa F. with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Teresa. And finally, John with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate you supporting us at that level. That's very kind of you. And with that, we are going to go ahead and wrap up tonight's live launch coverage of the Starlink 7-18 mission. Really appreciate everyone for being with us tonight. Want to thank our Stephen Young, who's been running the technical side of the broadcast behind the scenes. Want to especially thank you at home for taking part of your Monday evening or late afternoon, perhaps, wherever you are in the world, and being with us for our live launch coverage. And Terry Darrow for coming in at the buzzer with $1 super chat as well. For all of us here at Space Flight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.